even males who are experiencing severe male factor infertility, the fact that there is an option for them to father their own biological child and for them to be successful in the IVF journey and feel successful and feel like a human being again, nobody should ever feel that if they would have known, they would have done something differently. And now that I'm in the situation that I'm in, I'm doomed. That for me is so terrible. I'm also cautious not to tell women to freeze their eggs if they're too young, because I don't want them to feel disheartened. I don't want them to feel like they're failures. Heaven forbid to say that, oh, I'm 28 years old, I haven't found my match, and therefore I'm a failure.
Rabbi Segelman, it is an honor to have you here today, especially about the conversation that we're going to have. So many people are struggling with infertility, and I'm glad we're keeping this dialogue open and alive. And it's been my mission to help those who are struggling with this such important topic. Let's talk through, first of all, your background and what was the catalyst to get you where you are today. Start where you'd like to start.
Oh. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on this podcast. It's an honor, it's a privilege to be able to share my perspective from PUAH, the organization that I work for, really the number one resource for the Jewish community in every area of fertility health and reproductive health. 1 out of 6 couples, 1 out of 7 couples, sometimes 1 out of 5 couples are struggling with infertility at some stage of their life. And when we zoom in on the Jewish community, there is this hyper obsession with children, big families. The Torah, the Bible, the very first commandment is to have children, to procreate, to be fruitful and multiply. And everywhere you turn, so much of the programming in the Jewish community is focused around our children. The big issues in the community are about, tuition and children at risk. It's all about children. There's this pressure, which is everywhere. It doesn't. It's not limited or it's not unique to the Jewish community. But there's something very special about children and that pressure that it poses for the Jewish community, and it's very difficult. It's very hard. And it's very challenging for so many members of our community. And when I was offered a position in PUAH almost 10 years ago, I saw it as my calling, as an opportunity to be involved in an organization that would help the community on such a large scale. There are so many wonderful organizations in the Jewish community, but something which really builds Jewish families, brings more Jewish life into the world, was an opportunity that I really couldn't turn down. And I'm so thankful and fortunate to have been hired then and to still be able to work for PUAH and to be able to continue servicing the Jewish community in any way that I can.
And I know it's such an important topic of discussion, especially navigating conversations with parents and friends. And I'm glad that PUAH, I can offer that as a resource to my clients. And I know that people in general, when they are struggling to conceive and have to turn to assisted reproductive technologies, there's a lot of guilt and shame surrounding that. So how do you approach that, especially with the Jewish community, that you're going to need IVF, IUI?
Yeah, it's a very common struggle, very common issue, and I'm straddling both worlds, both dealing with the patients and also kind of protecting myself and my identity and my level of confidentiality. I'll just give you an example. We help, thank God, so many couples have babies, and when a baby boy is born on the 8th day, we have a bris milah, which is a wonderful celebration. The baby is circumcised, and all the family and friends attend the ceremony, the party. And whenever I'm informed of one of our couples having a baby, they almost always inform me of the bris, and it's my honor to go. But I walk in the door, and then sometimes a lot of people will look at me and say, "Oh, well, how do you know the family?" And I'm, sometimes they belong to my congregation. So if they're in my congregation, it's obvious why I'm there, because I'm the rabbi. But sometimes it's couples who are outside of my community in different synagogues, or sometimes completely different communities altogether. And when I walk in and people approach me, look, how do you know this family? I really have to be so careful to keep this confidentiality, to keep their privacy, and not to tell them that, oh, this couple struggled with infertility and thank God we were able to help them. PUAH was able to be there for them and guide them and bring them to the finish line. I so want to share their story and share the success, but I certainly can't because I have to keep it. I have to keep it private and respect those boundaries. Very often there is a lot of shame, and there's a lot of guilt, and there's a lot of privacy that no, they don't want anyone to know. They don't want anyone to find out about this. And sometimes they even ask internally, are we doing the right thing? After all, if God decided that I was not going to be able to get pregnant, if God was the one who determined that I wouldn't be able to conceive, who am I to now go ahead and book an appointment at this fertility clinic and see this specialist and go ahead and do an IUI or do an IVF? Who gave me the right? Am I going, against God's will? And people are really struggling with that very philosophical question. And often I just look at them and I say, if God wanted you to be childless, he would have created a world, or he would have brought you into the world 100 years ago. And you would have been, you're through your reproductive age. You would have been, in the 1900s. But the fact of the matter is that you are trying to conceive now, not then. You weren't born then. You were born now. And you are struggling with infertility now. And now, in 2025, just look around, see what God has given the world, not the Jewish world, the entire world. Look what God has given mankind. He's given us science. He's given us IVF. He's given us IUI. He's given us embryology. He's given us ICSI. He's given us all of these things. That's a gift from God. And the very God who made you the way you are with your journey is the same God who gifted the world all of these incredible technologies. It's our duty to fill his will and to be able to celebrate those technologies, the artificial reproductive technology and assisted reproductive technology. It's all there for us. So I try to comfort them and give them insight into the fact that what they're doing is not a contradiction to the way that they think God has set their trajectory, but on the contrary, embracing all that God has given and recognizing that they're all different pieces to their fertility puzzle.
In terms of the Jewish law, how do you advise a patient, especially if they are working towards their ovulation window and they have the Sabbath coming up? Do you have a special workup plan around that?
It's an excellent question. And that really goes into, you're really hitting the nail on the head. One of the major stresses that a Jewish couple goes through during their IVF journey or their fertility journey in general, and that is, beyond the regular challenges and the emotional distress and the confusion and the worry and the anxiety that anyone, Jew or non-Jew, experiences. On top of that, there's another level, there's another dimension of anxiety, which is Jewish law. Right? Not only do I not have a baby, but now I need to try to get a baby and make sure that I don't compromise any Jewish law. And one of the examples that you just mentioned, Shabbos, Sabbath. Every seventh day we have our Shabbos. We know it's coming. It's always there. It's always on the calendar. And there are a lot of things we cannot do on Shabbos. We can't go in the car. We can't turn on our phone. We can't write. So when a doctor says, oh, let's come in on Saturday morning for blood work and monitoring, it's like, wait, what? I can't come in for blood work and monitoring. It's the Sabbath. It's Shabbos. How am I supposed to get there? And when a doctor says, test your ovulation, in the morning, so that's a little bit of a question. Can I test my ovulation? Am I allowed to take a pregnancy test or an ovulation test on Saturday morning? After all, the sticks, once I put the stick in the urine, there's an image that's going to be created, whether it's a happy face, whether it's a line, whatever it is. But there's an image that I'm going to create. I'm not allowed to create images. I'm not allowed to draw. I'm not allowed to write. I'm not allowed to text. I'm not allowed to do anything like that. So there are so many questions that and stresses that will go into the Jewish patient as they think about and as they embrace their fertility journey. Shabbos is one of them. And when we're dealing with early ovulation, we try very hard to set up their schedule in that Shabbos will not be an issue. Someone asked just the other day, I just got this question, am I allowed to test my ovulation on Shabbos morning? So I told them, well, listen, they're tracking their ovulation because they want to conceive. They don't want to miss the window of ovulation. So I said, listen, why do you need to check ovulation? Well, I want to know if I'm ovulating. Maybe we're going to have relations. So at that point, it was permissible for them to be together. There's the laws of family purity, which is another dimension of, of just a complicated issue that has to be navigated. It's not a bad issue; it just has to be navigated. And but this was a time that the couple was able to be together; they were able to be intimate. So I said, "Listen, don't test in the morning, but whatever. Let's assume that it showed positive, and you would act in a certain way because of that. You would have relations at that point. Go ahead and have relations. You don't need the test. Saturday night and then Sunday morning, you can check again. Friday morning, you'll have checked. So it's not so critical that they actually test on Sabbath morning, on the Shabbos, because it's not going to give much information. Sometimes there will be important info. I'll give you an example. Sometimes doctors need to know when to trigger, to give the trigger shot. And if they can't come into the lab, so often what they'll do is they'll have the patient take a pregnancy test, and based on the pregnancy test, they'll decide whether or not to trigger the patient. So if that has to be done on Shabbos morning, there are ways to do it. And I always, this is a great time to say it, and it's so important. Couples should be in touch with rabbis who are familiar with the fertility journey. They should be in touch with PUAH. They should be in touch with their own local rabbi. If the rabbi is not familiar, we're happy to speak with them and to help them and guide them. But there are so many questions that could come up, and the rabbis, PUAH, we're here to help you. We're here to help navigate the situation. How can you go ahead and do what you need to do without compromising Jewish law, without compromising medicine? So be in touch with a rabbi. Be in touch with someone who knows what's going on, who knows the questions, who knows the answers, can guide them, tell you how to do that pregnancy test so that you won't be able to be at a loss. You won't be able to lose out on a window of potentially triggering at the right time. So really, it's so important, and this is just one small issue, but on a broader scale, please, to everyone listening, ask a rabbi. Be in touch with us as an organization. Be in touch with rabbi. Be in touch with people who are familiar with the fertility journey and Jewish law to help you navigate every single step of the way.
Exactly. And your journey, you don't have to be alone. You have a choice, no doubt. So male factor infertility, as you know, is on the rise. How are males within the community dealing with topics like ICSI, or even sperm donation?
This is another example. You're getting all the great examples. Another example of, when we view that Jewish patient, that couple, that Jewish couple. So again, beyond all of the emotional distress that anyone who's going through infertility experiences, now the doctor says, provide a semen sample. We need a semen analysis. And sometimes because of the male factor issue on the rise, and it's so important, by the way, to break that stigma. It used to be that the female was always the culprit. Mm-hmm. Your infertility journey, it's because of her.
Right.
And, anyone who has looked at recent studies and the research shows that almost 50% of the situation, it's the male factor, right? 33% female factor fertility, 33.3% male, and then 33.3% something. Unexplained. Together, it's a together issue of both of them. But to say that it's more female issue than male issue is just wrong. So that has actually changed a lot of the way medicine has been viewing the male and has been viewing the workup. It used to be, why take a semen analysis? We have to figure out her issue. But now, no. She comes in and he comes in at the same time, and let's test the semen. For a Jewish couple, that can pose an issue. The standard method of procurement is masturbation. In the Jewish community, masturbation is not allowed. Generally speaking, we don't use a condom as a form of contraception because you're not allowed to waste seed. And if a man is using a condom and he pulls out, that condom is going to go in the garbage. That seed is going in the garbage. That's wasting sperm. And that's not allowed in Jewish law. And those laws are very well known to the Orthodox Jewish community. And when they hear that they need to produce a sample, it's like, what? Everything that I've been taught since I'm a little boy that I must not do, this is really off limits. Here, a doctor's telling me I need to go into a collection room, masturbate, and bring a semen sample. That's outrageous. For many people, that's really is such an anxiety-provoking request. And the fact that it is so important in the fertility workup has been changing the way rabbis look and view their couple's fertility journey, the way that rabbis issue rulings for the couples, when they're allowed to produce a sample, when they're not allowed to produce a sample. And this is another example of why you have to be in touch with a rabbi who knows what's on the ground, who's familiar with the statistics, who's familiar with the fact that male infertility is very prevalent, and also to be familiar with the methods of procurement. It's true that the lab will ask for a semen analysis through masturbation, but there's also a way of collecting it with a male factor pack, a condom, a sterile medical condom, and the couple can do it at home through intercourse and then bring that to the lab, let's say usually within an hour and a half. Usually the doctors are okay with that. And that's a way that we're able to kind of navigate bringing in that sample and at the same time not compromising their fertility journey, because we do believe that a semen analysis is a very important part of their workup, the fertility workup. ICSI has been very helpful because knowing that even if the sperm quality is poor or the motility is low, morphology is poor, whatever it may be, you don't need millions of sperm to have a baby. With ICSI, all you need is one. So the fact that even males who are experiencing severe male factor infertility, the fact that there is an option for them to father their own biological child and for them to be successful in the IVF journey and feel successful and feel like a human being again, ICSI has been a tremendous gift, and I personally recommend it because it really makes a lot of the difference with successful IVF. Sperm donation is another option, that we have to entertain when we need to. But thank God, a lot of the technology. Just in the summer, I was in the Columbia University Hospital together with Zev Williams, Dr. Williams in Columbia, and Dr. Williams was showing me the new technology that he and a partner of his invented, which was an AI sperm identifier in which a sample, which the doctors had looked at, embryologists had looked at, andrologists had looked at the sample, saw that it was azospermic, no sperm. They deemed the male patient azospermic. They took that sample, that very sample, and they ran it through the machine. The AI machine was able to not only identify the sperm, but it was able to separate the sperm, and then to use that sample in ICSI will actually really cut down the need for testicular surgeries, testes, microtestes, to try to search for sperm, and also sperm donation, because there are now, with the new technologies that are coming available, and again, let's go back to the beginning of this conversation. This is God's gift to the world. Yeah. This is God's gift to the fertility community. An AI machine that's able to identify and separate sperm that you'll be able to use with ICSI. Take all of those crazy, unbelievable, never thought of before concepts, but something which is real. It's real today. In today's day and age, people are doing it today. Babies can be born from these technologies, and we can prevent testicular surgeries, sperm donation. It's a very exciting time to be in the fertility space.
It truly is. And so we're going to dive more into that. But before we do, I want to ask you about egg freezing. And why is it now a more common procedure and no longer a stigma?
Well, unfortunately, there is still stigma. That means there's still work for us to do, you and I. There's still more podcasts we need to be on. There's still more speeches we need to give and conferences we need to plan, because the stigma is still there, unfortunately. But you are correct. We have seen a very large change in the attitude and perspective in many of the communities. And I'm just going to speak about the Orthodox Jewish community for now. It's true that many years ago, not even so many years ago, but just recently, in the last 10 years, egg freezing has shifted from experimental to mainstream. So we know that something started out as egg freezing started out as experimental. The way that they used to freeze the eggs, which was a slow freeze, didn't really prove to be so successful. And I'm sure that back then it was obviously the stigma was much higher, but also the success rates were poor. Now, where it is no longer experimental, the method of freezing is not the slow freeze, it's that fast, rapid freeze, vitrification. So the success rates of egg freezing, thawing, fertilizing them with sperm, and then eventually implanting into the uterus is very good. It's very high. And I'll just tell you this, and I've said this before, the hardest thing for me to hear, the most painful thing for me to hear, is when a woman is told that she can no longer conceive with her own genetic material. And then she's asked, well, did you freeze your eggs? And she says, what's that? egg freezing, no one told you about egg freezing. And she says, no one told me about egg freezing. How come nobody told me about egg freezing? How come I didn't know about this when I was in my 30s and I could have frozen my eggs? And now I'm in my 40s and I'm being told that I have no more capability to mother my own genetic child. That's heart-wrenching. Nobody should ever feel that if they would have known, they would have done something differently. And now that I'm in where the situation that I'm in, I'm doomed. That for me is so terrible. We're looking to empower women to be able to make the decision. If a woman doesn't want to freeze her eggs, she's not comfortable. No one's gonna twist her arm. No one's going to force her to do something that she's not comfortable doing. But at least power every single woman to be able to freeze her eggs at the right time, at the opportune time, knowing that when she needs these eggs, they're available. And you know what? She may never need the eggs. She may get married. She'll find Mr. Amazing. She'll get married. She'll have her own biological children. She'll conceive naturally. Wonderful. You'll never need those eggs. And we'll deal with, what to do with them when the time comes. But if you do need them, if you get married and you are 44 and the doctor says, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do with you for you, even your IVF retrievals are not proving to be successful, at least she'll have those eggs as a backup. She'll be able to go to those eggs and have for the children that she's always wanted. So in my opinion, it is something which is so important to get the message out there that women can and should freeze eggs if they're comfortable. It is such an important process. It is such a life-saving process. Number one, it'll be able to give them the practical ability to have a family, and it will also give them the emotional wherewithal to say, I was informed, I was empowered. If they did it, great. If they didn't, it was their decision. But never look back with regret.
That being said, what age should a woman consider freezing her eggs? With me, looking back, I barely made the cutoff. If I knew I had that choice, I would have just banked it. But luckily for me, I didn't, have to go through that process. But for other women, and when they feel like, after their career has evolved, now is the time to start a family, but then look at the quality of your eggs.
It's a good question. There's so many different details that go into this answer, and the variables range from, how old are they now? Are they in their 20s? Are they actively dating? If they're in their early 30s, if they're in their mid 30s, many doctors will tell you that before 35 is good. Before 35 is good. Once you hit 35 and then head towards 40, so you do see on the graph that there is a decline in female fertility. Up until 35, very, very, it's there, but it's minimal. And therefore, if a woman is under 35, that's still great. Now, I'm also cautious not to tell women to freeze their eggs if they're too young, because I don't want them to feel disheartened. I don't want them to feel like they're failures. Heaven forbid to say that, I'm 28 years old, I haven't found my match, and therefore I'm a failure, I'm someone who's unsuccessful, and let me go bank my eggs. That's not what this is about, and it's not about that for a 35-year-old or a 36 or a 37-year-old either. But emotionally, it could be a difficult jump, and I don't want someone to prematurely jump into that if they really feel that it's going to impact them in a negative way. So it's a conversation. Where are they feeling? What are their thoughts about egg freezing? Are they actively dating? Some women are actively dating, and I wouldn't jump to freeze eggs. And other women, unfortunately, are not actively dating. They haven't dated in a year. So in the Jewish community, when we don't go out and necessarily go to a club or a bar and find someone, but rather it's some type of match that's made, and we're just kind of waiting. It's a very sad process for many women. They're just waiting, and no ideas are coming their way, no resumes are coming their way, and they're really not active in the dating world. So for that woman, I think I would be a little bit more, I don't want to say aggressive, but I would be more encouraging for them to freeze their eggs even at at an age of 33, 34. 35 again is a great time to do it. Once they hit 35, even if they haven't thought of it yet, I think that's really a very important time to begin the conversation and to start scheduling consults and learning about it and figuring out which is the best center, the best location for them to go ahead with their egg freezing.
When a woman goes, or a young woman goes to visit her gynecologist, do you think this subject should be brought up?
I definitely do. I think gynecological health, in terms of their personal health and / their fertility health, is very important. It's something that is not necessarily on the forefront of every woman. And even if it's kind of on the back burner, it's there. So even if their priority in life right now is not about kids because they haven't even gotten married yet, so they can't even think about kids. They need to think about the stage before that. They need to think about dating. They need to think about getting married. But it's important to know that if you want a big family, and in the Jewish community, we do have large families. So if you're going to want to be one of those families with a large family, we're talking about 5, 6, 7 children, you have to be proactive and you have to be mindful of the fact that if you only start your fertility journey with an advanced maternal age, so then the chances of children having a larger family is significantly diminished. You have to be able to see that if you want 5, 6, 7 children, that means you're going to have to bank many eggs, and that means that you're going to have to fertilize many eggs in order to have many children. And if that means starting earlier so you'll have time and you'll have the physical, biological ability to produce more eggs, so that's important as opposed to a woman who's only looking for 1 or 2 children. So I wouldn't say that for that woman, she could be negligent or hold off until it's too late. Not at all. But the conversation should be there, even with her gynecologist, even at a younger age, even if they're not going to do anything about it. But at least they're thinking about, what am I going to do to ensure that I will have that family that I've always wanted when the time comes? Always, again, to be empowered to make decisions as opposed to being in later on in life and saying, hey, how come I didn't know about that earlier? How come I didn't freeze earlier? How come I didn't have this conversation earlier?
It's important to empower young women that choice is the most powerful thing that they can have in their lives.
Absolutely.
What is your take on cycle tracking apps versus fertility apps?
It's a good question. I don't really have an opinion about it. I know it's very common. They're very common, and all these different types of apps. And, I think what's important is that these apps are a tool to benefit you, but it's not the end. It's not going to give you all of your answers, and it's not going to take away your own effort and your own involvement. In other words, that people need to be proactive. People need to use the app as support, but recognize that there's a lot of things that they have to do themselves, with conversations that they have to have with their doctors and with their husbands and wives, and they need to understand how it works with real science. It's good as a backup, and it's good to help guide you. But ultimately, we have to get pregnant. We're going to get pregnant without the apps.
So I met you at the Women's Health and Fertility Halacha Conference in Woodmere, and at the intersection of women's health is fertility. What was the catalyst to form a joint venture with Northwell?
I was meeting with Northwell in the summer, I think it was, and they were showing me their new lab, which was very impressive. And we were talking about different members of the Jewish community and different offices that they have, and different members of the Jewish community who were calling me asking for offices. And I said, there is such a large Jewish community in the 5 towns in Long Island, and you're right there. It's such a shame for people to not be aware of the local offices and the local fertility options. And the truth is, Northwell is one option, and there are other options as well. But, it was that meeting that we had, it was like, it was like an aha moment. But how do we get the word out? It's so frustrating. It's like you have all these resources, but nobody knows about the resource. You have an organization that's here to help, but why should anyone go through it alone? So how could they continue to build their office, and how could PUAH continue to help the couples if people don't know what resources are available? So it was kind of a very organic, decision. Let's get the word out there. Of course you could put ads in the paper and you could advertise on social media, but to make a conference and to bring the experts into one room, the rabbis and the doctors, and discuss the intersection between Jewish law and medicine and fertility medicine, fertility health, it was really a no-brainer.
So how will this help with halacha and lab supervision standards?
It's important for the community to know that there are different halakhic considerations. In other words, when a couple is going through their fertility challenges and they're going through their journey, it's important to know that there are halakhic considerations. In other words, considerations of Jewish law. Number one, we mentioned Shabbat before, the Sabbath. That's one example. We spoke about semen analysis and sperm procurement. That's another one. Third one that we spoke about was family. We mentioned family purity and the woman's cycle of going to the mikvah, immersing in a mikvah, being spiritually pure for the husband, and at the right time being able to be together. Another one of those considerations is lab supervision. And I'll give you just a little bit of background about supervision. When the first IVF baby was born in 1978, Louise Brown, that news hit the world, and the Jewish community especially, we wanted to know, well, is this something that we can do as well? And the Jewish community approached many different rabbis who were the ones who were leading the communities and making the decisions, what's permissible, what's not permissible. And the rabbis, for the most part, said no. And part of the reason why they said no was because what's going on in the lab? Wait a minute, you have to explain to a rabbi that's never heard. I mean, that's not just the rabbis that never heard it before. No one heard of IVF before. It was a breakthrough that shocked the whole world. You can take an egg out of a woman. You could take the sperm from a man, put them together, fertilize them in a lab, and then implant that back into the uterus, and it's mind-boggling. When the rabbis heard about the process, the question was, wait, the sperm is going behind closed doors in the andrology lab, and the eggs are being harvested in an OR, and then they're being brought to the embryology lab. Well, who's to say there's not going to be any mix-up? Who's to say that's a way that we can preserve and uphold lineage, which is so important in the Jewish community? Lineage and the family ties and family lineage in the Jewish community is something which is critical for our religion. And that was a huge scare, to the point where they did not permit IVF. The Sephardic chief rabbi, one of the main rabbis in Israel at the time, had a student named Menachem Borstein, who's the current founder of PUAH. And he summoned his student and he said, listen, we need to make a list. We need to make a checklist, right? Let's check off identify first all of the issues that all of the rabbis have with this process. And then we need to find a way to address every single one. And we need to find a remedy. We need to find a way that we could fix this. And they did. And in order to address and to fix the issue of sperm, egg, genetic material in general in the lab without any supervision, the idea was supervision. Let's bring someone into the lab who will oversee the process, who will be there. They'll watch, they'll observe, they'll know from every moment that the sperm was outside of the body to the moment it was fertilizing that egg. It was watched. It was under our watch. And when we're not there, we seal it and we tape it with a tamper-proof tape and with a tamper-proof seal, that we were able to know unequivocally that no one has tampered, no one has touched, and no one has mixed up these embryos, these eggs, this sperm, whatever. And then, after PUAH was able to bring this service to the community, then you started to see rabbis' opinions changing. And you saw them to embrace IVF slowly but surely. That together with the success rates, they saw how successful it was. They saw how many couples in the world were actually getting pregnant because of this technology. And then they said, okay, with supervision, it's okay. And that's really how PUAH began. PUAH began as the organization that provided supervision for couples to then allow them to go ahead with IVF. Now, fast forward almost 40 years later, we're talking about an international organization with main office headquarters in Israel, with a huge office here in the United States, New York, and through LA, and we're hiring regional directors in Florida, in the tri-state area, in Midwest. It's really fantastic. We have 2 rabbis in Mexico. We have a presence in France. We have a presence in Australia. All from that little meeting that they decided that we need to do something. We need to open doors. Doors have been closed to our Jewish community. We need to now open those doors. So the hashgacha, the supervision, the lab supervision, is something that is services that we are dedicated to the Jewish community, that wherever you are, you need to go ahead and do IVF or an IUI in your lab. We will be there, whether it's 5 o'clock in the morning, whether it's 6 o'clock in the morning, whether it's right before Shabbos on a Friday in the winter when Shabbos comes in at 4:30, we're there on Friday. And we'll even do the checks on Shabbos, on the holidays. If you need us, we are there. And that service has brought so much hope and so much faith and so much success to the Jewish community. It's nothing short of unbelievable.
So I know we talked a little bit about AI. How has AI technology impacted the fertility industry, such as the artificial womb and the sperm scans that you talked about.
Yes, I mentioned the being able to identify sperm. That's huge. Being able to identify sperm and separate the sperm through the AI technology is a huge breakthrough in the world of male fertility, and then in having babies. That's absolutely massive. Also, when it comes to AI, the doctors are using it in very different forms, in very different settings, and they're really helping the patients. I was speaking to a doctor recently who is using AI to screen and to scan imaging of the uterus, and he told me that the AI is actually able to identify certain uterine issues that he wasn't able to pick up on. And to be able to identify a uterine issue and then to go back to the couple and say, hey, your miscarriages are because of this. Recurrent miscarriages are something which are so devastating and so horrible and so confusing for a couple. And to have a diagnosis to see, oh, there's a reason. Now I know what the reason is. Let's try to address it. That is such a valuable piece of information, and AI is helping in that regard. Testing egg quality to it used to be, the different tests and the different way of scaling and screening the eggs and the embryos to determine what's healthy, what's not, what's more healthy, what's less healthy, what's abnormal, what's not. Now having systems of AI being able to do that screening in a very, very efficient, productive, and quick way is just helping the community, the fertility community, on so many fronts. So, and I spoke at that conference about even using face recognition to try to, when it comes to egg donation, to try to envision what is this baby going to look like if we use the sperm, the husband's sperm, and then donor's eggs. What is the baby going to look like in the future? AI technology can help us with that. There's so many different parts of AI. It's an amazing gift. It's an amazing gift that Hashem, God, has given this world. That it's scary and can easily be misused. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But when used in the right way to help couples, we're seeing the success.
If there was one thing you wanted the listener to take away from our conversation today, what would that message be?
The message is that PUAH as an organization, rabbis as leaders, other couples who have gone through what you're going through, what anyone who's listening is going through, are always available to help. We don't often think like that because when I'm going through something so personal and so private, I tend to think that I'm the only one. I tend to think that there's a sense of isolation. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. Nobody knows what I'm experiencing. But conversations like this and conferences like we had in Woodmere and organizations like PUAH are really here to teach the world, to educate the world, and to raise that awareness that there is someone, whether it's a couple, a rabbi, an organization, that can help you. There is an address, and there's no reason for you to do it alone. I just came back from Dallas, Texas this morning, and I met with a couple yesterday. The couple was suffering from miscarriages, and they had spoken to many doctors, and I sat with them and we discussed all of that they've gone through. And at the end of the conversation, they almost said it together. Thank you for being here, that we have someone to talk to. That's not our doctor who's, very set in his ways that this is the treatment and this is what we're going to do, or a genetic counselor that's kind of just very, you give us a new perspective of someone who is a fertility, expert, just not me, I'm not tooting my own horn, but PUAH as an organization is an expert organization. And also we have experience with so many other couples that I can bring to the table and say, oh, well, I had a very similar conversation with the other couple and they thought like this. And the fact that they recognize that there's an organization that heard them. There was another couple that went through a similar experience. Just that alone, even if I didn't give them any help or any guidance or any direction, just knowing that there was someone to talk to who understands them, who understands their confusion and understands their pain, and knowing that there are other couples that are also going through it was like a burst of optimism. And it was a burst of direction of, wait a minute, I can do this. Other people have done it. It's hard. It's difficult. It's painful. Yes, no one's going to tell you otherwise. But we're not alone. And there's someone who can hear us and someone who's going to listen and someone who's going to help us. That was so impactful for them. And I think that is the message for everyone who's struggling in their journey. It is so It is so difficult to do it alone, and no one should do it alone. Reach out to us, reach out to your peers, find a support group, help us connect you to a support group. Because when we're doing that together, when we're all together, when we're all supporting each other, then we can be successful and we can see real results.
Perfect. And I'll leave it at that. Switching gears, Rabbi, what do you like to do to protect your mental health, even self-care, little personal?
That's a really good question. I don't have time to think about that. I don't have time to think about what do I do for my own mental health. I can't say that I do much to on a personal level to address my own mental health. But what I do is I'm very cognizant of the fact that I have a wife, I have children, and as much as I give to the community, I also have to be present for my family. I have to be present for my wife and present for my children. And I'm always really thinking about the balance of being available to my community. I'm a community rabbi as well. So beyond the work that I do with PUAH and the fertility space, I also oversee a large community, a large congregation in Los Angeles. And people from the community reach out on issues that are not related to fertility. And I really try to balance all. I mean, I feel like God gave me a gift to be able to help people, and that's what I want to do. But it can't come at the expense of my wife, and it can't come at the expense of my children. So I think that anytime I have a free minute, I'm not looking to. I don't even know what other people do to wind down or to take care of their mental health. But I want to speak to my wife. I want to smile. I want to be able to be there for my kids. I want to be as present as possible because I do have a busy life. And I'll just tell you something my wife does. She always tells the children whenever we get candy platters or wine or meat boards. Someone just sent us a meat board before this past Shabbos, thanking us for the work that we're doing for them. And my wife always makes it very clear. She tells the children, when Tati, which is father in Yiddish, when Tati's traveling a lot and Tati's on the phone a lot and Tati is involved in so many different cases, this is us. They're sending us. They're not sending him the candy platter or the wine it's the whole family. We're all in this together. And to try to make it that the family is helping the Jewish community. It's not just me. I'm not helping. I'm just one piece of a puzzle. I'm just a pawn on God's board. But we're all this, the Segelman family, we're all in this together. And I think that the more my wife can encourage the children to be a part of been part of the success, and the more I can do to be able to be present with my wife and children. By the way, this is obviously just a reminder for myself that as I'm traveling and I have to go back to LA tomorrow, be present and be happy and be cheerful with the kids and with my wife. I think that's the most healthy thing that I can do for my family. Perfect.
Share with our listeners where they can get in touch with you and your best social media handle.
Sure. Check us out on PUAHfertility.org, www.puahfertility.org. I believe all of the Instagram information is there. My email is on the website, esegelman@puahfertility.org. Send us an email, reach out, like us, follow us on Instagram or Facebook, and be in touch because, as I said, we're here for you. We're here for the community. So reach out and let us connect.
Phenomenal. Rabbi Segelman, thank you so much for being here today. Your passion and commitment is so amazing.
Thank you. It's my privilege, my honor. Thank you.
Thank you.